Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Identity Project. Today, I'm extremely excited. I'm bringing on a guest that is a fellow podcaster, so he appreciates the audio setup. He's got a nice little Yeti microphone over there, so this one's going to be a good one. But Sam, what is going on, my man? How are you?
What's up, brother? Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure to share my story with someone else's audience and add value to what they're trying to do and make a difference in this industry. So I appreciate you sending that DM and getting us connected, man. It's a great way to meet new people. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. I think as a it's interesting because reaching out to people through a DM on Instagram can sometimes be I don't know, scary or whatever for some people. But I've just found that there's so many people that are just say yes. And I think it's so cool because especially as like an entrepreneur, it's a very lonely journey. And so, for me to be able to set up an hour interview or really conversation 2 to 3 times a week with like other people in the space, other entrepreneurs, I think it's just super powerful.
Yeah. And most people don't have, the time to put into this or, the spouse or partner that can support them through this because it's not an easy project. We're all just trying to make a difference. And at the end of the day, it's just doing whatever we have necessary at our hands to do it with. Right. So supportive of everybody trying to make a difference and help others get better.
I love that, man. I love that. So where did all that stem from? Let's take you back. Where were you born and raised? And yeah, kind of tell us about you kind of as a child growing up there.
Yeah. All right, man. So I was actually born in South Korea. I was 3 months premature.
Oh,
I
wow.
was abandoned on the street, and I lived my first 8 months of life in an orphanage in South Korea. I was born with a hernia, pretty not real healthy, right? If you go in, 3 months premature, definitely there's a lot of complications already. And then you add in obviously the abandonment piece of leaving someone on the street. I don't personally think I suffer from any of that now. I'm sure there's characteristics in my personality that's from, but yeah, it doesn't seem to bog me down by any means because this amazing family in Kelso, Washington, who was having some fertility issues, we're looking for someone to adopt. And I was very blessed to be adopted by an amazing family, Steve and Mary, in Kelso, Washington, which is a little rural town outside of Portland, Oregon. We're about an hour north of Portland, about 3 hours south of Seattle. So grew up a Mariners, Seahawk, Blazers fan, grew up a Sonics fan, but they got taken away. So I had to go to the Blazers. And so I grew up in a very small, blue collar town. Like most of it was driven off the paper mills that were in town and the logging community. And, was in a very high school football driven, kind of high school, right? And Friday Night Lights, that whole thing. Not quite Texas level by any means. Having lived there, definitely nothing close to Texas. But I mean, you understand that small town kind of vibe.
Oh yeah.
And so, my mom was a youth minister and my dad worked at a paper mill. And so I spent a lot of my childhood doing a lot of, everything from playing baseball and taekwondo to tennis to volunteering at the local soup kitchen kind of thing and doing Bible camps and, getting to play a big role in my community. I'm no longer practicing in my faith of Catholicism, but I'm very appreciative of what my time in the church led me down and the skills that I've developed from it. And it led me to make a decision to move to Portland, Oregon to go to college and do my undergrad. And so I studied entrepreneurship, organizational communications, and business. And I always imagined that I would come out and end up working at Nike or Adidas. Both of them are based in Portland, and that's where I thought I would, go into. And I always wanted that job where, and God, this is going to sound so lame, but in the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, and you have Matthew McConaughey pitching to get the diamond account, right? Like I always envisioned that would be me, like being in an ad firm, like pitching ideas or doing strategy for someone else kind of thing. And that was something I always really enjoyed. And so, going to college, that's kind of where I thought I would end up. And my parents didn't go to college, so I didn't know really what to expect other than go out and have a good time. And so ended up failing out of college my sophomore year. Was able to get back in to school and finish on time, which I now tell people, but before I hadn't been telling people for a long time because it was a difficult thing to say you failed. And I mean, it was stemmed through A, me partying too much and being a shitty student, but B, my mom had a brain aneurysm the second week before finals or the week before finals my sophomore year. So I skipped all of that week of school to spend it with her. And Ended up trying to pull 4 all-nighters in a row to pass my finals and didn't pass them all. So ended up failing out and having to reapply to get back in, which I did. And then finished school in an amazing economic time known as the recession of 2008, or the Great Recession, as some people I've seen refer to it as, and which, for those of you who are not old enough to remember, a recession is not an easy time to enter the workforce with not a lot of work experience. And so I was kind of forced into this route of taking a job selling memberships at a 24-hour fitness. So I sold memberships for like a year and a half. And when I got there, I had a kid that was my boss that was like 19 years old and trying to tell me how the world worked. And I'm a pretty, let's just say I don't suffer from confidence issues. And when I need to be assertive, I'm very assertive. And I didn't like having a 19-year-old kid trying to tell me how the world worked, especially when I just spent $120,000 getting a private Catholic education, right? Like I went to this really nice college. I'm very full of myself already in a good way. But it was like, so to have someone be like, this is how the world works because he was my manager, wasn't vibing with that at all. So that created friction on the front end and was like really hard for me to want to accept being in the fitness industry, quote unquote, because in 2008, the jobs in the fitness industry were not what they were now. There weren't opportunities like to work at SoulCycle in the marketing department or at Equinox or 24. I mean, they were much farther and few between, however you say that. And so it was something I never even really considered. And so here I was pissed off that I had to take a job that was beneath me. I was quote unquote overemployed, I think was the terminology that they were using back then. Obviously, education that supported more than something I could have done with a high school diploma. But here I was. And so I realized that my attitude was really shitty and that I guess I should ask first, is it okay if I swear?
Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Just making sure because I do it. And it's fluid, but I can not do it. And so, it was like, all right, well, if I'm going to be at this job, at least I'm in the bougie area of town. So at least the 24-hour fitness I did work at was in like the affluent area of town. Right. So it was where people were that had big time jobs, that worked at Nike and Wyden and Kennedy and all these big time advertising firms. And so I was like, well, at least you're in a target rich environment, quote unquote. And, you do like fitness. Like I played baseball and tennis growing up and I liked fitness, but I didn't train. Right. Like I was just happened to be athletic enough to play sports. And like, sure, I would go to the gym in the off season of baseball and go lift weights, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't look at my day where I was pretty undersized. So as a sophomore in high school, I was 5'3" and 112 pounds. So like the idea of becoming a power lifter and Olympic lifter never really crossed my mind. Like that wasn't like, and even the whole idea of like, if you train, you can go do it. And I was like, yeah, I don't have scouts coming knocking on my door for, 115 pound kid. So it just wasn't something I really pursued really hard. Even though I really love baseball. Like my childhood dream as a kid was to own a Major League Baseball team or be the general manager of a Major League Baseball team. And so I'll get into why that's really important in here in a minute. But really had a hard time accepting that. But I was like, all right, while you're here, at least learn something. So I really befriended a couple of the trainers, Tony and Steve and Aaron and Natalie and Joey. I don't want to name everybody, but really just started like trying to learn. Like I'd go work out with every single trainer, right, and learn what they were doing. And then instead of sitting making phone calls at my membership desk, I would go sit with the trainers and their clients and like rack weights and talk to them. And it ended up being where that provided me enough leads to where I could like get memberships and like I was doing my job. So it didn't really make a big difference, but I also didn't care because I wasn't really interested in being a membership sales guy at a gym. And nor did I want that, nor was I like looking at it as an investment of like, this is the first foot in the door and now you're going to whatever, go on to do something great. It was like, oh my God, this is literally the worst job I could possibly have. I have this kid that's sitting here trying to be my manager that I want to sock upside the head. This sucks, right? And I was pissy about it, and I had a negative attitude about it. But getting into training definitely helped alleviate that, and that led me down a route to look at, Jim Wendler, but like Mark Ripito, starting strength, getting into, the big four, pressing, pulling, pressing, deadlifting, squatting, benching, and power cleans, and it led me down this like traditional strength route. And then that got me into like, just at least feeding my strength and getting stronger and focusing on that game. And then it kind of turned into, maybe doing a competition. And so there was a day where Tony, dear friend of mine and early mentor and great friend now, and he was going to go down to this strongman competition in Seaside, Oregon, and do a strongman competition. And I was like, oh, dude, I'll go down to the beach with you and hang out. Like I honestly didn't even know how to deadlift or clean or like do any of these things at this point in time. So I was like, I'll just go to watch. And then it turned into like, if you're going to go, you might as well try it. Right. I was like, all right, whatever. So I do this strongman competition, and it was a local meet, but it was a ton of fun. Had a ton of fun doing it, and was like, ooh, I kind of like that. And I also wasn't shitty at it. So that also helped feed my ego a little bit. Like I did well in a couple of events where it's like, okay, I can hold my own, right? I'm not getting my ass beat entirely. And so then that turned into like, okay, let me work on getting stronger now. And so really getting into, I remember doing a starting strength phase, 3x5, 5x5, and then moving into like Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 program. And then that led me down into Joe DeFranco. And Joe DeFranco was an early, now we're friends, which is great, but, early mentor, even though he didn't know it, because that's, he introduced me to the idea of Mike Boyle and Smitty Diesel and Jay Ferrugia, and like, oh shit, there's other people out there, right? And so then it got me into competing in powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and so I ended up doing 3 powerlifting meets, 3 Olympic weightlifting meets, and then 1 strongman meet. And that was just during my overall competitive career. Well, I'm starting to train at 24 Hour Fitness, and I'm doing it all for fun, right? And so I'm just it's fun to get to hang out with the trainers and have a cool job, and you're just getting healthy, getting fit, quote unquote. But I was consistently still looking for my big kid job. And so finally, I ended up getting an offer from an action sports company that does kiteboards, wakeboards, stand-up paddle boards. And originally I was going to come on and do marketing for them. And then it turned into, hey, we can't really bring you onto that part of the team. Could you do sales for us? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, okay, well, we'll have you over North America for wakeboarding territory. And I was like, cool, that's great. Understand that I can wakeboard is that in that, like, I can get up and I can ride and I can crash exceptionally well when I do ride a wakeboard, but I don't go wakeboarding, as in my parents don't own a boat. I don't spend a lot of time on a boat, so I don't talk like I'm a wakeboarder. It's not like, bro, the ballast was so full that I just threw this nasty shifty and like just totally cut that wake up. Like that was nasty, right, bro? Like that just wasn't me. So, I mean, I was willing to learn. I was willing to become that, but I was more so excited to get out of selling gym memberships that to have like a salaried job and a corporate job, as I'm doing the air quotes for those of you who aren't watching me, put that little shitty emphasis on it. But it was like, I just was looking for anything because I'm very competitive. And so I'm watching, and granted it was 2008, but I'm watching all my friends get great engineering jobs and nursing jobs and jobs at Nike. And I'm like, God, I had great internships. I had like, sure, I failed out of school, but like I did a lot of the things that would have necessarily gotten me in those spots. And it's like, shit, like I got to sit here and sell gym memberships. Like I didn't go to school for this. Like, it's not what I want. Like I had a negative effect on what I thought a sales guy was. So I didn't want that to be it. So anyway, I finally get to this action sports company sales role, but at least it's a salary gig. I'm still making dick money. And 2 months in, I get fired. And I get fired for not being a culture fit / not being bro enough is what the words were getting thrown around. So I was not bro enough to work there, which is fine. And so it's Friday at like noon when this happens. And I'm like, I've never been fired. I've never been cut. Like, I don't know what to do. So I'm making calls because the job was an hour and a half away from where I lived. So I was driving an hour and a half each way. And for like 27 grand a year, mind you. So my parents were definitely still helping me out with gas. And so I was like, I have nothing else to do. So I stopped by the 24 Hour Fitness I used to work at and went and worked out. And my fitness manager, Rusty Sandusky, was like, dude, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I got fired today. And he's like, oh, I'll pay for your first cert if you want to come back and become a trainer. And I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. 2 hours in, I got a new job. Sweet. And so I was like, all right, took my test and did my little like, hey, I'm coming back to 24 Hour Fitness. I got fired. I'm going to be a trainer now. But had like 3 people right away were like, because I came from membership and people already knew me from hanging out with trainers, right? Like, they're like, oh, I want to come train with you. Because by this point in time, I'd also had, started to build the story around that I lifted, I competed, I was strong. I wasn't strong in the real world of strength, but I was strong compared to people at 24 Hour Fitness. And so, my first month, I had people right away. So my first month I did 40 sessions. My second month I did 80 sessions. My third month I was doing 120 sessions a month, doing about, 8 to 10 grand in sales a month. I was like, holy shit, why is this so easy? Like, not why is it so easy, but like as a membership guy, I'm literally teeing some trainers up with like 30 session packages, like at the point of sale where it's like, and then they don't re-sign them. I'm like, wait, you had 30 hours with that person and you can't re-sign them? Like, what were you doing the entire time? Right. And because then jumping into training, I was like, oh my gosh, this was not that hard. Right. So within 3 months, I had a full-time schedule. Right. So I'm like, holy shit. Okay. I'm just going to ride this out for a little bit. Right. And just reset. And so it was cool because I had all my, like the coworkers I was used to, and it was safe. Right. It was a very safe move. And, I had friends and coworkers, and I got to do something that was sexy. It may not have been fulfilling my personal career, but there's something sexy to say you're a personal trainer, right? It's not like, oh, I'm a sales guy, right? You're like, oh, trainer's got a way better ring to it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to ride this out for a little bit. And so grew really fast. I became at 24 Hour Fitness, you have different tiers and how you can grow. And so I reached their highest status, which is a master trainer, in 2,000 sessions. And I did that in 18 months. And then 3 certs. And so I was like, oh, just kind of cruising along and still competing. And then I was kind of playing around with going private for a minute, and then was like, I don't really want to be in this industry. Like, sure, this is fun, but it's not what I want to do. And then I used to train the CTO of Doc Martens, the shoes. And I remember because the iTunes store had just come out. That's how old I am. And so he was like, dude, we should put some videos of you up on the iTunes store. And I'm like, nobody wants to see my fat ass bouncing up and down doing a squat on the iTunes store. Like, because I didn't go to school for this. Like, I went to school studying startup businesses and whether they're going to be feasible and be successful or not, right? Writing business plans and doing PR releases, not training programs. But it was fine. Like, I knew enough about training, but like, I wasn't Joe. I wasn't putting myself on that pedestal to where I'd be on a podcast someday because someone wants to know my story, my advice. And so I was like, I need to get out of this industry because I'm not that person. So why would I ever want to keep chasing something I don't deserve to keep growing into, right? It's great. And I'm okay with the realm that I play in, but I'm training people out of a 24-hour fitness. I'm not ready to go touch elite level athletes. I don't really know how this game works. I kind of just fell into it. And because I'm good at the sales and the personal side, that it became easy, right? And so I started like, okay, let me try to get out. So then I was going to go take a job with this company called Spark, which was an athletic performance equipment company that Nike had bought. And I was going to go work at Spark. And then Spark got dismantled. And then I was like, okay, great. And I was kind of like, I slowed down taking clients as I was going through the training, like the onboarding experience and interviewing, because once again, I'm narcissistic, right? Like, I go into, like, if I'm interviewing for a job, like, I'm going to get an offer. Right? Like, very rarely am I not going to get an offer. So I'm like, yeah, I'll stop you taking clients on, right? Just like make the transition easier. And it wasn't, then it turned into like, oh, that's not going to work. And so then got into an opportunity with Red Bull. And I was going to go do collegiate sports marketing, which I did for 4 years at my college for them. And then it turned into a miscommunication between, do I get to go to college sporting events or am I going to the bars passing out Red Bull? And so it wasn't the best fit for me to go to the bars and pass out Red Bull, even though I did like going to the bars at the time. And so that didn't work out. And I was like, oh shit. All right. So then I built my training business back up. I'm like, okay, let me make sure I have full-time schedule. That way I'm at least making that money and doing that thing. And one of my coworkers at the recruiting agency, at the training business, Aaron, his wife, Ashley, was starting up a staffing agency, right? For doctors and medical and also like software sale. And so if I was a recruiter, right, and you're work at company A, I'm trying to poach you from company A and take you to company B, right? And so then I get paid a fee for doing that because not only is it better if I poach you from one of their competitors, but you already come in with a set of skills, right? And so that turned into like, okay, started expanding on that and was like, I got to be employee number 7 and, saw the big commission numbers, right? Like if you ended up placing a $150,000 employee, you're making like a 10 grand paycheck, right? For placing that person. So I'm looking at that going, holy shit, because even at 24 Hour Fitness, even with a good business and a steady business, I wasn't making that much money at 24, right? And so it was like, oh, okay, it's fine. Like, and sure, could I have gone private and been okay? Yeah. Could I have, and let me also say that like, I didn't chase the leadership game either, right? Like as soon as my business started taking off, like when I was a membership guy, I was upset that they didn't even ask me to take on those leadership roles. Not that I wanted them, but they didn't even ask, right? And a couple people got brought in front of me and taken an opportunity I probably deserved, but they didn't give me because I didn't want to be there, right? And so that was also shitty on my part. But I'm also happy I didn't do it that way. Same with training. Like a business takes off right away. They're like, you should go be a club manager or a fitness manager or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I walk 10 blocks to work. I make my own schedule. I have one of the most consistent businesses in all of fitness, right? So why would I leave that? Right? I'm just going to keep riding this out. It's fine. I don't have to work hard for re-signs. I only have to add like 1 or 2 people every couple months to my business. So it was whatever. And so, I'm not chasing those games, but I was like, okay, now I can be number 7. Now I can really grow a career. It's not that I want to be in recruiting, but I do like the idea of being in early and making some cash, right? And that's where I kind of was at. And so jumped into the recruiting thing, but it was pretty much a commission-only job. And so, they had great perks and they were an amazing company to work for, but salary-wise, it was commission only, realistically. And it wasn't something I could really take on that kind of hit for. And so I trained a client every morning from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. I went to the recruiting job from 8 to 5. I came back, I trained at 6 and a 7 and at 8 p.m. I was on the board of 2 different nonprofit organizations. I played and ran a semi-pro baseball team. I still had my friend and family schedule, and I still went to every social event that I could, because that's just who I was. So I was out the door at 4:45 every morning, home at like 12 or 1 a.m. every day. And I did that for a couple years. And because for me, I have massive social bandwidth. And so that's just who I was. Growing up like with a mom that was a youth minister, I'm at the church, I'm doing events, I'm doing all these things all the time. Plus I'm a natural extroverted person. So you put someone that's used to being in social situations for long periods of time consistently. And for me, it's like, because I know I have that, maybe I'm unhappy in my life, but I can just bury myself while making myself look really busy, right? So even though my career wasn't where I wanted it to go, who was going to ever assume that I wasn't being successful? I had 2 jobs. I was on the board of 2 nonprofits. I played baseball for fun, right? I still went to every single gala or non-event or whatever else. So on the front end, people were like, holy shit, this dude's got his shit going on, right? Because I was insecure about where I was at in my career. And so, I'm training and doing the recruiting thing and just running the camel on both ends. And end up dislocating my shoulder in May playing baseball. Then I broke my ankle in June playing baseball. And I'm on crutches. I got fat because I was partying too much and I was depressed. And my buddy and I went to dinner one day, and him and I had we've been best friends for a long time, but we've had rounds of when we're close and not close. And we went to dinner, and he looks at me and he goes, dude, because he's worked at the same job. He still worked at the same job. He's worked the same job since we got out of college. And he does asset analyzation for college campuses and medical hospitals, and super bright dude. But he looks at me and he says, dude, you make me feel like shit. He's like, you have 2 jobs, you play baseball for fun, you work with 2 nonprofits, and you don't miss a weekend away if our friends go camping or to the beach or whatever. He's like, you're at everything. And he goes, but what's the highlight of your day? And I sat there for a minute and I realized that I didn't have a highlight. I was just going through the motions. And it was easy for me to go through the motions because that's what I can do. But it made me start thinking that, man, when I finished my undergrad, I always thought I was going to move to New York. And I've always wanted to move away from the Pacific Northwest where I'm from. I just never did it. And so I went to my boss at the recruiting agency, Joel, and I said, hey, man, look, I love working for you, but I actually really hate this job. I'm doing like 120 cold calls a day kind of job. Mm-hmm. And I said, but look, it's also unfair because I give you 10% of my day. I'm in the door at 8. I'm out the door at 5. I give you 0 extra time. And I'm good enough for you to keep me around, but I'm not good enough to grow this thing. So my solution is let me go work remotely where I can give you 100% of my time, because we need to figure out if this job is right for you and me. If it's not right, then I need to stop wasting your time and your money. And if it's not a good fit for me, then, you owe me the same thing. Right? Like either way, we got to figure out if this is the right move. So let me go work remotely where I can block out all the other distractions, quote unquote, in my life. And I'm just going to do the recruiting thing and move away to where I can start fresh. And let's just see if this is a good fit. Because if it is, you got a better employee. I got to move away and we're in a better situation. And if it doesn't work, then we're both going to save time and money. Right? And so he comes back with, okay, tell me where you end up. And I was like, oh shit. Right? Go on this big rant about why I want to move away. I'm not chasing my dreams or yada, yada, whatever I said at the time. And it's like, I can't give him that whole spiel and then not go. Right? So I'm like, oh shit, I got to go somewhere now. And so I'm debating between Chicago, New York, Boston, and Austin. And this is 2014 when this happens. And I'm like, okay. And New York was always the goal. Like New York was always the goal, but Chicago was entertaining. Like I wanted to go to a baseball city where like I could go get season tickets to a team or at least hammer out a ton of games. And I ended up choosing Austin, Texas, which does not have a baseball team, because I moved in November and it was going to be cold as fuck in the other three cities. And I didn't want to start out a new adventure in a new city where I sat in a bar in the first 4 months because it was too cold to go do anything else when I just came from an environment where I was partying too much, right? It was that 2014 is when I broke my ankle and my subluxed my shoulder, and I gained about 40 pounds heavier than I am right now, 30, 40 pounds. So I just wasn't in a good spot. And so, packed my bags and drove to Austin, Texas, and lived with my friend Ashley and her husband James and their triplet 1-year-olds while I was looking for an apartment. And so I lived with them for 3 weeks while I was looking around. And thankfully, I like kids a lot, and I just got to play fun uncle, which was awesome. But 3 kids is a lot to deal with for those of you that have children or have been around children for an extensive amount of time. Love those kids to death, but they are exhausting. And so then all of a sudden, backtrack into about July, right? I'd mentioned that I was a big Joe DeFranco follower. Well, around that summertime, I don't know what exactly date that I remember seeing this, but there was a period of time where all of a sudden Joe DeFranco announces he's moving his gym down to Austin, Texas to merge with this company called On It. And I was like, how serendipitous is that one of my favorite coaches is moving his gym down to the city that I'm moving to, right? So, and then I heard a rumor that it was only for athletes. And so I'm like making every call I could at the time to try to see if I could squeeze my way in there. Like I won't talk to anybody, just let me come in and lift kind of thing. And so I ended up becoming the very first member of the On It gym when it opened up on December 1st of 2014. And the guy who signed my membership up was the name of John Wolf, who is the chief fitness officer of On It, oversees anything fitness related that goes on at On It. And so him and I were able to get close through that experience. And, when I moved to Austin, I probably knew in my head that I wasn't going to stay doing recruiting, but it was an opportunity for me to get out of the Northwest and change my story around to where, for those of you that are going through turmoil in your life, sometimes pain or like a new experience is the catalyst that forces us to play our hand, right? So I was waiting for something like that to where I could move away. And so that was the catalyst that helped me move, right? Or getting into being in fitness was driven because I got fired, right? Like, so, sometimes those dark days end up becoming the bright lights in your life, which we'll get to. But I became the first member of On It. And so immediately when I got down there, I started looking at other jobs, and I was trying to move into territory sporting goods sales for like Rawlings or Louisville Slugger, right? Love baseball. And my buddy Travis had a great job at Nike where he literally was like the player rep for Nike. So he's like golfing with Ken Griffey Jr., talking to him about what gloves they should be doing kind of shit. And I'm like, I want that job. Like, that's like the ultimate job for me. And so like, that's what I was trying to get to. And then John and I started talking about what it would look like if I came on board to work On It. And it was funny because my original pitch was, let me travel the world and go tell people about On It, and it's going to somehow work out. And he was like, yeah, that won't work. So then it turned into like, okay, then we started talking more about it. And so I came on board to help run the On It Academy education system, the trainer education system, coordinating certs and helping organize all the logistics that go into running an education system, which is a lot for those of you who haven't seen the behind the scenes of that. And it was just this cool experience that like, I wasn't there to coach. I wasn't there to be a personality. I was just there to learn and grow, and came on board and just started kind of going at it. And, as I got deeper and deeper in, it turned into, I went to every single, On It Academy seminar that we hosted over 2 years. And then after 2 years, it kind of turned into me starting to help teach a little bit, right? And obviously I come from a coaching background, but I wasn't trying to be in the front of the room. I was just there. And then it turned into teaching a little bit more, then leading sections to inevitably it ended up me like teaching solo and teaching other workshops by myself. But it all stemmed from me just happening to be at these courses because I'm not a great electronic communicator. Like if someone asked me like, hey, what time does this thing start? I'm like, oh, it starts at 10. Like I don't give you the fluff sandwich of like, oh my God, it's so great to hear your voice. It starts at 10 tomorrow. I can't wait to see you. Really, whatever. Like that's just not like I'm going through email as fast as possible. It starts at 10, starts at 9, whatever. And so people would be like, are you mad? I'm like, no, why would I be mad? I just don't want to talk on email a bunch. And so then it turned into like, if I'm at the seminars, people understand me a lot better than if I'm like emailing because I'm not a great email communicator. And so that's what was the catalyst of me going to all these seminars Well, then it turned into, there was an opportunity for me to travel to like an NSCA conference. And then started traveling to those, and then started going to other conferences. And then there'd be times where I would speak either on behalf of On It, because that was part of our sponsorship package, or I'd lead like a workout or a workshop or a warm up or something of that nature. But it was putting me in the front of the room consistently in front of people. Well, then it turned into my partner, Sayla, and I, and Sayla is the only reason why this whole thing works, because she's actually really talented and smart, and I'm just there for mediocre bouts of comedy and someone to laugh at. But between her and I, we brought in partnerships for On It with Exos, which is the largest sports performance and corporate wellness provider in the world, Equinox, Gold's Gym, UCLA, and then I also started training one of the highest decorated baseball players ever. And so all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, look at all this stuff you guys have going on. Why don't we let you guys focus on that more? And so then it built into this job where I transitioned from being on the On It Academy on the education side to overseeing strategic partnerships. I still taught for them as well, but it wasn't my primary function of my job. And so then this last year at On It in 2018, I flew 67 times across the country, going to every single conference, workshop, speaking event, meeting I could possibly get my hands on, over 150 days on the road, but also working 42 weekends a year for the last 4 years. Right. And, I did about 150 flights in the 4 years I worked on it, across the board. So, getting down to Austin, finding my way on it really was just my way of finding myself and finding a career to really press down on. And so, once again, it was still like, I wasn't trying to be in the fitness industry. Like I was doing it because I was still there, but I liked being on the back end of fitness, and I wasn't teaching classes or training clients. But I mean, I would slowly start going out and training some people here and there, or teaching like a group that came in. And it was like, okay, like I like this version of fitness. I like that I get to be on the strategy side of the business, not on the day-to-day operations, even though I can do it and it's fine. It's fun. But then it turned into this, holy shit, look what fitness has provided me. It opened the door for me to become a leader inside of an industry. And to be honest, where fitness really took off for me, so I trained a baseball player by the name of Jake Arrieta. And Jake was with the Chicago Cubs. And not only was he with the Cubs, but he helped the Cubs win the World Series after a 108-year drought, throwing 2 no-hitters, winning a Cy Young Award and the World Series and a Silver Slugger. So he's very well respected in that. And so me getting the opportunity to train him opened this door to where I was like, holy shit, look what fitness opened up to me. Right? Because let's say I worked, because now honestly, and we'll get deeper into this, but Jake's turned into one of my best friends, and we hang out quite a bit, and just someone I really care deeply about, just like anyone else in my life. But, when I get to go to the Phillies game and I get to be in the clubhouse and hanging out with the guys, like I told him, I was like, dude, you have to understand, like sometimes this is really cool for me as a little kid. Like, sure, like I got to be professional and I'm doing my thing. I got to pretend I'm cool, but you got to understand, like the little kid in me is freaking out right now where I'm like on the field during BP hanging out, right? Because that's little kid dream shit right there, right? You're a baseball fan, Oh, yeah. And to have these guys hit you up, right? So now it's like he's been a catalyst to have other players and agents hit me up and ask questions and want to come train. I'm like, holy crap. Because I could have gotten a job with let's say the Mariners out of college, but I would have never been this close to baseball ever, right? There's a lot of people who work for the Phillies that aren't as close as I get to be. And so for me, it was like, that was what finally gave me the gratitude to really appreciate fitness, because it gave me that opportunity, which very few people will ever get in their life, no matter how much they want it. And so that, it really created a different storyline for me in fitness to do. But yeah, it's, through this whole journey in fitness and traveling and going to things, it also created an opportunity because I'm a connector. And so I really love networking. And so, I've been able to turn myself into someone who's very well known for networking and having a big network, not just in like the Instagram fitness world, but in the education world, because we not only did On It have their own seminar, but we hosted other people as well. So then all of a sudden I'm, getting to hang out with John Russin and Andrea Spina and Mike Fitch and Mike T. Nelson and other Perry Nicholson. And it's like, wow. And I'm that point of contact. So then I start getting to build a reputation that way. And then I'm starting to speak more. Well, then I went to the Barbell Business, which was part of Barbell Shrugged back in the day. And I went to their mastermind. And I had this idea of a personal training coaching business, because very few personal trainers get to have careers even that I had at that point in time, or even have a full-time schedule. That like there's some things I can share with you that's not like you need to hire my ClickFunnels guy to build a business. I'm like, dude, none of that shit existed when I was a trainer, and I did just fine. Not that it's not important now, don't get me wrong. But that personal training coaching business turned into a podcast. And because Aaron Hind, sorry if I said that wrong, Aaron, but Aaron is the founder of Life Aid Bevco, or Fit Aid, right? If you guys are familiar with that drink.
We actually had him on a few weeks back.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Aaron, great dude.
Yeah.
And he grabs me after. And so in this mastermind, you do what's called the hot seat challenge, which you have 30 minutes to present your greatest opportunity or your greatest challenge to this group that's there, and everybody can poke holes in it, right? Or try to challenge you to get to the answer that you want to be. Well, when I got done doing mine around a personal training coaching business, Aaron grabs me off to the side and he says, hey man, I don't know what strategy you have to market this thing, but whatever you do, he goes, I don't even know how good of a writer you are, but you need to do video. That's going to be your strongest medium. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. And then it kind of brought this idea around like, what do I have access to that not a lot of people do? Holy shit, I travel a lot, right? And I also I could get conversations because I worked on it that other people couldn't get because I worked on it, right? So it's like, oh shit, well, why don't I just blend this? So then all of a sudden I was like, I should make it a podcast. And then, Jessica Webster, who now works for Ascension Labs, used to be Barbell Business and Gym Right, and that's gone through some different iterations. She also does fitness marketing for herself and consults as well. She contacted me about maybe doing a project together, and then we started talking about this more, and it turned into her and I doing this venture together. And so, now it's like I get this amazing opportunity, like moving to Austin, Texas on a whim to get out of the fitness industry, right? Really is why I moved down there, to then become the first member of On It, to then to come in and start working for them after being the first member of the gym, which is all about storytelling, which I'm a big person about. And then it turned into creating this opportunity where it's like I was in the front of the room a lot. And of all the people on it last year, I think I spoke the most. And I bet I was on the most podcasts, right? And it's like, man, we have big time people there, right, that are in that space. So it's like, that was kind of cool. And, as I'm going through and as my credibility is starting to get bigger and bigger, all of a sudden this opportunity at that mastermind I went to with Barbell Shrugged, there was also a guy there named by the name of Casey Jenks. Well, Casey had started a company back in 2015 called Fitbot, which was an online platform for coaches to deliver custom online programming to their clients. And so then let's fast forward from 2015, 16, whatever that was, to October of 2018. And I get an email from Casey. Hey man, looking for someone that's got a really big network in fitness, can talk business, and can travel and shoot content. Do you know anyone? I was like, oh, isn't that funny that you're asking me? And at the time I really wasn't that interested. I had a great thing going on it. I really wasn't looking for something else. And, I was like, hey man, I'm not really interested in something right now. Really appreciate you looking out though, but I'll put it out to my network and see if I can find you someone. And I was like, but you should go talk to Marcus Gursey, who used to run Gym Right and now runs Ascension Labs now. And I was like, go talk to Marcus. He might know someone that would be a good fit for this job as well. He's like, oh man, cool. I've got a call with Marcus anyway. I was like, great. Next day I get a call from Marcus and Jessica, actually, because they work together. And they're like, you need to heavily consider looking at this job because we just got off the phone with them and we just talked about you. And so he's like, at least be willing to have that conversation. And so I was like, all right. So we got back in touch and we started talking about the role. And then I met, who's now my boss, Robbie Jack, who is the CMO and a co-founder. And, enough conversations turned into, okay, what's it going to take for me to leave On It and come on board? And so we whittled that down and they hit every bucket. Every bucket you would have to want, they came in and hit. And the best part was, honestly, so, John Wolf, who was my boss for the last 4 years, also one of my best friends, I told him that this was coming up and this was an opportunity for me. And my current boss, when I tell him about a new job approaching me to come work for them, his first response was, I'm so happy to hear that other people see in you what I see in you. I really hope this opportunity works out. And I'm like, what fucking more do you want from your boss than someone who supports you through that? Right. And so felt very blessed and honored that he gave me that kind of support. And because I'm not the type that I want to sneak around. If anything, I probably overshare than undershare, because I'm like, it doesn't matter. If you're going to judge me for something I overshared on, if that comes back to bite me, I can own that. Right. But I don't want to play the game of having to You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that was a huge move for me. And so, in December-ish, I think is we decided on that I would come on to work and be a part of True Coach. And originally I was going to be a remote employee. I didn't necessarily want to stay in Austin because I didn't build a great life for myself in Austin. Not that I don't love everybody in Austin, not that I didn't love Austin for the tacos and the barbecue and the people. But when I got down there, I really cut hobbies out of my life. I stopped going out really. I didn't date really. I really just put all my eggs into the career basket and wanted to push on that as hard as possible. And so I realized that I lost a lot of balance in my life as well. So I didn't want to stay in Austin. And I was considering moving to LA, San Diego, and New York. Once again, New York's coming back up. And, maybe not necessarily stay there forever, but at least stay there for an extended amount of time to where, maybe like I'll go hang out in New York for 3 months or LA for 6 months or whatever that kind of looked like. And then, they were like, hey, we'd still really love if you would come to Boulder and hang out. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be in Boulder. I just don't want to be there full time. And so then the more I wrapped my head around it, it turned into like, you know what, maybe Boulder would be a good move for me because it's a great town with huge food scene. I'm a big food guy. I don't have this one big ab for no reason. I train this one ab very hard, fill it with lots of great things. No, just kidding, kind of. But it wasn't an environment that I think I would have been limited by, right? Because even though Boulder's 100,000 person town, there's great restaurants, there's a ton of activities. We have, Saturday I went on a 9-mile hike, and to get there was a 5-minute drive from my house, right? And so I was like, okay, maybe Boulder's a good move because it now reinstalls hobbies back into my life. Trying to find a better balance between work and life. And so in February 13th, I packed, or I didn't pack. I moved out here to Boulder, Colorado from Austin, Texas, and came on to be the vice president of brand at True Coach, where I oversee everything from organic social media and content to brand strategy to events and partnerships, and really get to take my career from being someone that sold memberships at 24 Hour Fitness and take all that experience that I've gathered throughout those, now 11 years. And a lot of it, I didn't even want to be in the industry to now getting to like build a fitness business almost from the ground up. We have about 5,000 coaches worldwide using our platform. So we have, obviously a customer base. We have some great traction already. And so now it was like, holy crap, before I've always been executing someone else's vision. Now I get to come in and execute my vision. And so that was a really powerful tell to be able to come in as well. And, I think fitness too, I think we're on the right at the edge, and fitness is going to be one of the driving factors of augmented reality and artificial intelligence. And so now I'm in a tech firm, not at a supplement media company. And so now it's like a whole new set of skills and environment that I'm learning. So it was like, I want to get on the front end of that wave. So, all in all, a lot of this has been about, as I look back retroactively at my story, it's been a lot about acquiring experiences, acquiring knowledge, acquiring people and perspective, because perspective only comes at a cost. And that's of time, money, energy, and pain. Time, money, energy, and pain. That's the only way you develop perspective. And so through all these different experiences has led me down a path to just barely make the right decision or get my ass kicked enough to make the right decision. And then to end up in a spot, to be able to end up in a spot where, once again, I always thought I would be, and that's doing like brand strategy, pitching ad concepts or campaign concepts, to be able to like, this is what I want to do. And on top of that, I was also able to bring in baseball into my life at a really high level. So, all in all, man, a big storytelling person. I think Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller is one of the best books out there if you want to be a great marketer. But all in all, all of those pieces of my story have led me to this day to be able to be on this podcast and share that story with you and tell you that, not because I want you to like, oh, he's got a cool job or whatever, because that's not the goal. But a lot of it is like, hey, you don't have to have the fancy internship. Like you went to Ohio State and went to exercise science and interned with Eric Cressy and then Mike Boyle and then Exos. And now you're at this college and now you're the strength coach for the Boston Red Sox. Like those are great stories to have. And that that definitely comes with its own turmoil and getting your ass kicked for sure. But there's plenty of people in the fitness industry who didn't go to school for kinesiology, and that they don't even necessarily want to be trainers, but that was a vehicle to help inspire that you can use fitness now as a vehicle to build a career in, because there are so many more opportunities today in 2019 in fitness that weren't available in 2008 in fitness. So all in all, I'm not sure you were ready for a 51-minute version of my story, but I've told it a few times. And so that's the story you got.
Dude, that was Sam. I really enjoyed it, man. I love it. I mean, God, I want to respect your time here. I have so many questions to dive into.
We're here.
But man, that's insane. I mean, this is the part of it that I just love the most. Like I love hearing people's stories, especially like this. I mean, it's amazing. So I want to take you back to, I mean, really the thing that kind of blew my mind from the very beginning, obviously with your parents and whatnot. Like, what's made you so driven up into this point? I mean, you're driven as fuck. Like, I can just tell. And I mean, obviously you've gone through a lot of stuff in your life and overcome a lot of adversity, but man, that event that happened to you at such an early age, like being abandoned, like how much do you think about that? And like, how much does that drive you today?
Honestly, it doesn't. I mean, I'm sure there's some underlying aspect of it that definitely does drive me. But to be honest, I'm sure I have a different adoption story than a lot of other people. And this isn't to disvalue those of you that have been adopted. But like both my parents are Caucasian. Clearly I'm not. And it wasn't, I grew up in a white town, right? It was a blue collar rural town in Washington. But for me, it was never about like trying to, and I'm sure there's someone, if you're a psych major, I'm sure you can analyze me, which I'm okay with. But it was never about me trying to prove about being adopted or prove it to them that they deserved me as a kid. I've always been super competitive, and I always want to make sure that I put on good face in that. I never want people to look at me like, oh, like I admire a lot when someone's like, dude, clearly you're driven. Clearly you work your ass off, right? Because for me, I always want to be the person that's not in the room, right? So because I want to fill the room with people that I aspire to be, because it makes me work harder. If I know I'm the guy in a room, I get kind of lazy about it. You know what I mean? And so it was, I want to say being adopted drives that. I don't think it does. I honestly think it's my parents installing a life in me that I could do whatever I wanted. So I remember there was a day, and I was a good student. I wasn't a great student. I was the kid that made fun of you for being a perfect attendance student when like I wasn't that, and I still got better grades than you. Like that was me. Cause like I skipped school and did, smoked weed in high school and shit like that. Like, but like it didn't affect me, right? In like those elements. And so, it was an interesting idea to think about because, my parents didn't go to college and they didn't come from that type of environment. But I remember I failed 8th grade science. Sorry to go back to it. And my dad looked at me and he goes, dude, I'm not mad. He's like, people like parents might be pissed that, you failed the class. But he's like, look, he's like, maybe it just wasn't you. He's like, but here's the thing. You have two options. You can get C's and D's and you can go and work at the paper mill like me and have a nice family and have a nice house and you can have this life. Or you can get A's and B's and do whatever you want. And I was like, huh, all right. That's interesting to think about. So, and notice my dad wasn't saying like, you got to be perfect, right? 4.0, get into college, right? Which I know a lot of like very traditional Asian families are definitely that way, right? Like you're going to be a doctor, perfect attendance, piano lessons, violin lessons, like that whole gamut. And that wasn't me. I got to do whatever I wanted, right? I was spoiled, I was spoiled, but like spoiled in that like I could do whatever my heart desired I wanted to do. Like if I wanted to play soccer, my parents were going to let me play soccer. They'd sit in the rain and do that. If I wanted to play baseball, I got to go do that, right? So that's where I was spoiled. I had things I could go do. We weren't limited by that stuff. And so it was there. I was like, oh shit, okay. And then it turned into because I, in the youth group and being at the church with my mom, I got to be the big fish in the small pond quite a bit because I was the youth minister's son. So I was at everything, right? And I was always very extroverted, right? So both my parents are very introverted people, but I remember being in like student council in elementary school, leading assemblies, right? Which is not a common thing for like a 10-year-old kid. Right. But that was just always who I was. So it never really bothered me. But those skills, like developing that early in, or like being on the baseball team and you're selling candy, like being the one, like, I'll go talk to the person at the fucking grocery store. Fine. You know what I mean? Like no one wants to be that kid. And I'm like, I'd always be that kid because it doesn't bother me. And because I've done worse stuff to be embarrassed than what any of that's going to do to me. And so, right. And so then it, like, I think that's what it was like the desire to be like, I do have a thing where I do like to make sure I'm very polished, not polished in like, I'm like white, super vanilla, but polished in like, holy shit. Like if I'm going to go associate with that dude, I better step my game up. You know what I mean? Like he's got his shit figured out, or it looks like I've got my shit figured out. I don't at all. But that, and then so for me, like I can't handhold everybody and I can't help every single person. But if I can be that, like, holy shit, like you better level your game up to come here, then I want to be that as well. So, it was a very unique thing to, I've looked at this more retroactively now to what drives me to drive that level because, I've got this, I'm an executive at a tech firm now, at a fitness tech firm, building out a strategy from scratch. I'm getting ready to launch a couple online programs. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I tag Be Less Fat all the time, but as a jovial, like sometimes I eat a burger and sometimes I eat, a salad, but either way, like we're all just trying to be less fat. So I've got a 12-week program coming out with that. I've got a baseball performance program coming out. I'm taking on some online training clients. And it's like, through all that, and then the podcast, I'm writing a book, but it's like, what drives me to do all of that is just being successful, I think, but not being successful in that, like, I need to be above all of you, because I think if a lot of people who do know me would say is like, I want to use whatever resources I have necessary to help my friends. So I look at it, if I'm the one that's willing to go get beat up and take some punches and take some licks and I can share that with my friends, then why should I not be that person? Right. And so I'm happy to be that person. And so people used to ask me when I traveled all the time, they're like, dude, how do you travel like that? Like, I mean, I did 63 flights before October, right? So that's like 2.25 a week. And I'm like, why I can do that? It's because I'm 32 and single, right? I don't come home and have to be dad or husband or boyfriend or whoever, right? I literally have to be one person all day, every day. And I can run that person at redline for long periods of time, right? Which a lot of people don't have that in them. So I'm like, well, if I have that superpower, I might as well do it. So I think a lot of what drives me to do all these things is the more things, the more assets, the more people, the more skills I can accrue, the more I can help other people. Because honestly, I'm kind of a lonely kid in that I grew up an only child in the middle of the woods in Kelso, Washington that hates being alone. So like I used to remember being crying as a kid because I just wanted a sibling, because I wanted someone else to play with, because my closest neighbor was like 10 acres away, right? So it wasn't like they were just right there to hang out with. We lived out in the country. And so like I wanted to have people around me all the time. And so I think that's honestly, if I could really kind of give you a good answer, and sorry I had so many roundabout ways, but I think a lot of it too is I'm willing to martyr myself to go out so I can give more to people that I touch.
I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. Do you feel like helping people is like it's almost like your oxygen? It's like what brings you fulfillment in life? Or
no, because I definitely have a lot of personal ego in it as well. Like, I very much like, if someone, like I said, if you want to come to the table and you want to do some business, like you better come to the table, right? I had a web developer call me today, and he had some big names on his roster that he's helped build websites for, and he wanted to start off by playing the name drop game with me. And I was like, okay, I'll play the name drop game with you, which is a game I don't lose ever, right? And so it's like, and so then he started telling me about his business, and then he's like, oh, I used to build websites for this guy, and I was like, well, you're not doing it for that guy anymore, right? He's like, well, I mean, no. I was like, so why don't you do it for him anymore? He was like, well, I was like, oh, okay. And then he kind of didn't want to go into a little rant about why that relationship didn't work. And I stopped him. I was like, hey, man, just so you know, that person's a good friend of mine. So don't say anything that's going to really hurt you there. And he was like, right. And so it's not just about helping people. It is, but I want to give you the Gary Vee answer and say, like, God, helping people fulfills my heart so much that it drives me to wake up every day, but it doesn't. This morning I didn't want to wake up, right? And I don't wake up thinking about being on your podcast today, right? Like, and I don't say that to be a dick, but like, that's just, I mean, I think a lot of these, lifestyle entrepreneurs right now are coming out like, I wake up and just breathe helping people getting better. And it's not that you don't, like, I definitely want to make the fitness industry get better, because I do look at it where it's like, I came from the bottom. I came from selling memberships at a 24-hour fitness to now getting to train one of the best athletes in the world, to being in the front of the room all the time. But it's like, how many people have my story that get to do that, right? But at the end of the day, that 24-hour fitness trainer is the first line of defense for a lot of people in the fitness industry. that trainer is going to get more people come up and ask what they should do about their flabby arms or their love handles or why they have diabetes quicker than they're going to find you and me. Excuse me. And it's not that that's a bad thing, but that means they're more accessible, right? Because as you get more busy, your time becomes less and less limited and you can share it with more people. But when you're a brand new trainer trying to grow a business, like you're kind of touching everybody, right? So as we get bigger in influence, and I tell this to people all the time, as your career grows, do not forget to celebrate the people that helped lift you up on that platform that got you to where you are today, right? Like, so that whole story I just gave you about mine, yeah, if you think I'm a douche, you're going to think I just name dropped a bunch for the last hour, right? But more so, it's not about me name dropping those people. It's about telling you and sharing with you the people that helped make sure that I got to where I am, and they were instrumental in helping me. That's why those people, those names and those stories were important. But, by not remembering those people, by not looking at, who's helped you along the way, you can't honor them. And then you kind of start creating these bad blood, relationships. So I think it's really important that we honor those people. But, as you start doing it, it's really hard to remember the shit that you went through to help get you to where you are, right? Who you are today is not who you were 10 years ago, right? Who I was when I was a 21-year-old membership guy at 24 Hour Fitness is not who I am today. So my goal now is, how do we give back to that community so that way that trainer can get better, right? Because right now the content marketing game and podcast, everything's trailing up. Everybody wants to keep pushing the ceiling higher, which is great. But there's a lot of people still down here that are still chasing that, right? And they don't even know what to look for. They don't even know that life even exists yet, right? So how do I help the local trainer at the local gym, right, learn how to have a better business so that way they can take a vacation? Because this industry has a 75% attrition rate, right? Most trainers that start out are out of here within 3 months when they start because, oh shit, I didn't realize that all those people who asked my advice when it was free don't want it when it costs $100 an hour, right? So all of a sudden you're like, I don't have any clients, or I can't get from going, I have 2 clients and things are going well, and then all of a sudden I have no clients. And I have 3 clients and then I have no clients. I have 1, you know what I mean? That's the game for a lot of people, right? And so that sucks. We've lost a lot of really great trainers because they're shitty at sales, right? So I remember at 24 Hour Fitness, I had a guy, Matt Hauk. Matt, shout out to you, buddy. Matt's one of the smartest kids in the world. He's now the sports scientist for the Portland Timbers soccer team, the MLS team. But really bright kid, super smart. Terrible at 24 Hour Fitness, right? Like just wasn't good at that sales game. Whereas like this dude knows way more about fitness than I ever did, than I ever still do, right? And I whenever I speak, I start off with that. I'm like, look, a lot of you guys are probably way better at the name the muscle game than I am. I guarantee you all are way. Like I just did a workshop at the NSCA headquarters to a bunch of grad students. And I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to win that game. So why would I even try to play it with you? But a lot of you will never have this version of a fitness career either. So how do I help you get that, right? It's great to be able to talk about your glenohumeral gliding and your thoracic, on top of your thoracic cage, but Grandma Betty don't give a fuck about her glenohumeral gliding. She understands I can't put my bra on because my shoulder hurts, right? So my goal is to help people meet them where they're at, right? Can I talk some shop? For sure, I can talk some shop. Do I care to? No, I'd rather use anecdotal stories and goofy, inappropriate humor to tell stories about how people can train and get better, not how much do I know about vocabulary, because I don't know that much. So yeah, I think that's what a lot of it is I feel, especially now, I feel such a deep appreciation for those times at 24 Hour Fitness that I had, that I'm like, holy crap. Like I remember, and so I was just in sorry, I'm a tangent kind of guy, so feel free to rail me in, but I was just in Portland at a tech conference for my new company. And I stayed an extra day to see my friends. And I was just taking a me day. So I got a haircut, I got a pedicure, I did a float. And after my float, I got done. I was walking by the 24 Hour Fitness I started my career at. And I've walked by it a couple times and had that like serendipitous feeling. But I went in and I did the tour, right, with the membership guy. And he's selling me hard. He's trying to tell me all the reasons why I need a trainer. And it was fun. It was really fun. And so finally, halfway through the tour, I stopped him. I said, hey, this is why I'm really doing this. I started my career here. This is what I get to do now. And he was like, holy shit, right? Because you could tell this kid's like, just wants to be in fitness because he loves it, right? But he has no idea that being a membership guy at a local 24 Hour Fitness could turn into him being a leader in the industry, right? So now that's what I look at is how can I touch all these different people, right? So unless it's a bad pitch, like more often than not, I want to say yes to if it works in my schedule, I want to say yes to every podcast possible because I want to share, because I'm not someone that's like, oh, my time's too great to be on. I'm like, no, like if I touch 5 people and they get value out of my story, then that's all I care about. So that's how I want to give back. That's how I'm trying to share, more so than like, do I wake up every day trying to like help, someone in the industry get better? Does that make sense?
Sure.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of what,
No.
I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's how I answered it.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it makes sense, and I love that because no different than you. That's actually where I started my career, 24-hour fitness.
Yeah.
I was actually working front desk, folding towels, making minimum wage. I was showing up late for work when I had a shift that started at 12 p.m. Like I was
Yep.
just so lost in life, and but yeah, man, it's crazy because I think back and I'm like, I see some of the 24-hour fitness, or I see some of these gyms out there. And if I wouldn't have started at this particular one with those mentors that were there, I don't think I would have been in the fitness industry. I think I would have been like, I'm out. Like this is,
Totally.
but I had such a great experience. I had so many great mentors during that time and like definitely impacted, that was 10 years ago. So what would you say, and I'd probably argue that On It definitely was probably pretty influential, but is there a person or experience that has been like the most influential in your life up to this point?
Well, I mean, as I look at it now, I've kind of broken my life into the different iterations, right? So college, even though that was Portland, college had its time, right? And then Portland after college was definitely the era of getting my ego checked and bringing me back down to ground zero of like, you're not special, right? Because, in high school, I was special in that like I could not show up to class and I was still better than most people at like the whole game. And then I got to college and I went to a pretty freaking bougie little college for me. And it was like, oh, there's a bunch of me's. Like, not only are you can do what I do, like on the fly, like you can present, but then, oh shit, you also are a 4.0 student that has like really great organizational skills, right? I'm like, oh damn, I'm out of my league, right? So that honestly pushed me. Like, I got kids like Becky runs all of retail planning for Nike outlets, and Doug, got his mechanical engineering degree, and then his aeronautical engineering degree from Air Force Academy, and then his MBA from Harvard. So I had all these kids in my college class that went on to do great things, right? And they're killers. So like for me to come out in 2008 without getting a great job, like definitely checked my ego and made me reset and humble myself. And so humility definitely was probably the early lesson, right? Or experience of the late 20s, mid 20s. And then I moved to Austin in, 2014. And obviously On It, I would not be where I am today without On It. I can absolutely say that. And I can say that for certain John Wolf and Shane Hines were definitely instrumental in that as well. But I mean, it was different, right? Because I tried to get out of the fitness industry a couple times, right? I'm selling memberships. I leave to go get my big kid job, get fired, come back to become a trainer, right? Tried to go private, decided not to go private, stayed as a trainer. Tried to get a job at Spark. That didn't work out. Came back to be a trainer. Tried to get a job at Red Bull. Oh, that failed. Came back to be a trainer, right? Got into recruiting, still kept training. Moved to Austin, became the first member of the gym at On It, right? Then started teaching, then started training athletes, then started playing that game, back into the fitness industry, right? Was looking at maybe do I get out? I was kind of debating, do I get an MBA? Do I try to go somewhere else? Do that whole thing. Boom, fitness tech company, right? So it's like, as much as I want to say like there's definitely been iterations in each not decade necessarily because I'm not that old, but each iteration of my life. So Portland's got one, Austin's got one. I mean, True Coach has got, and Boulder's had some that new life experiences. And so there's not just one singular one, but even look back at your own life and look at like, for those of you that are in the workforce now, I'm like, oh shit, like there's some stuff going on, right? Or I've had some things happen to me, right? And for those of you who watch Game of Thrones, look at the character development just of like Sansa and Arya alone. Like Sansa was this sheltered little prissy rich girl, right? That didn't know how the world, she just wanted to be a princess, right? And then you got to go through and get all that perspective of watching all the shit that she went through and watching her dad die. Like the character, why I say that is the character development of where these characters are now after 8 seasons of watching the show. You in your own life have gone through that same evolution. Absolutely. Right? You just have to knowingly look up and like, oh shit, I went through some things that changed who I am. Right? And I can honestly say I wouldn't be that person without that experience or that person. So there's not one that's really shaped it. There definitely been some pivotal moments in my life that have done it. Like I know that I wouldn't have gotten this job at True Coach had I not started the podcast. Right? Like so it's like, damn, right? So going to that, like, definitely created that storyline. And, are you on a time limit by any means?
No, I'm good. This is
Cool.
it for the night. Yeah.
So a lot of people want to train a high level athlete, right? That's a lot of people's dream, right? And for me, like, I never thought I would deserve to train a high level baseball player, but like, I did envision like being able to be at baseball in some capacity. And so I'll tell you guys how Jake and I got together. There was a baseball player by the name of John Baker, and John played 13 years in the MLB, was a catcher, traveled around for different teams quite a bit during his career, but he ended his career with the Chicago Cubs, and then is now the mental skills director for the Cubs because he just got his master's in sports psychology or whatever it is, so mindset around athletic performance. And so put John over here to the side. Well, this guy Curtis Hembroff is the instructor for jiu-jitsu at 10th Planet Austin, and which is based at On It. And him and I were buddies, and he knew I was a big baseball fan. And one night, it's probably 8, 9 p.m. at night, I get a text from Curtis, which was uncharacteristic as well. And it's, hey man, some baseball dude just came through jiu-jitsu to roll. And I was like, oh, dope. Who was it? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, cool. So I went in the next morning and looked at Zen Planner and figured out who it was. And it was this guy, John Baker. And I'm not a Twitter guy, but I'm going to have it. And so I jumped on, tweeted him, hey man, saw you came to On It. Really bummed I missed you. Would have loved to meet you in person. Big fan, blah, 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 blah. And then it turned into him and I chatting a little bit more. And then it turned into, I sent him to one of our courses we were teaching in San Francisco, which is where he lived at the time. And so he went to our durability course, which was all about restorative care and mobility and joint health. And then he was like, as we talked more, he came to Austin to work with their AAA team, the Cubs AAA team, who was in Austin playing the Rangers team. And so then he came down and we trained for a week and hung out and went to some games. And then he was like, dude, you gotta start training Arrieta. He lives here, right, in Austin. And I was like, oh, cool. So then he connects me with Jake via text, and then next thing you know, I'm like, hey man, yeah, I'm let me know how I can help, assist, and be of value. And I say that to anybody that's looking to get into someone or into that situation. Look at it this way. Of course it's valuable for me to train Jake Arrieta. Is it valuable for Jake Arrieta to train with me? Right? Just like if you see that celebrity or that movie star at the restaurant, of course it's valuable for you to see them in the middle of the bar at a restaurant when you're out on a Friday night. Is it going to be valuable for them, for you to interrupt them in the middle of their dinner with their family? Right? Probably not. So pick and choose your moments and look at the way you approach this. And it's anybody. I don't care if it's an athlete or a celebrity or a coach you really admire or someone in business, right? If it's an influencer, a network, whoever it is, right? Is it valuable for them? And so, that's always the game I play, right? How do I add value? If I have the capacity to do it, how do I add value to what you're doing? And so, we started off and it was going to be around, like, I was going to help him build a new home gym. Like, that's how our early conversation started. And then it was like, oh, I'm going to be in Chicago in a couple weeks. If you just want to get together in person and chat for lunch. He's like, yeah, man. So we went to lunch. And then we kind of kept in touch throughout the year. And then, we didn't even really talk about training. But I knew it was like, all right, I need to get him in for a workout with me before January 1, because once January 1 starts, he's baseball activities only, right? And he's known for his fitness and Pilates, right? He's a big Pilates guy. And I'm like, you can't disrupt these athletes' flow once they're doing their thing. And so, purposefully, usually I would go back to Portland for Christmas and New Year's, and I would stay there. And this time I was like, I'm going to come back right after Christmas because I think I have a shot at training this guy. And so I got him in once right before Christmas and then came back after Christmas, and we trained every day, 6 days a week for 2018. And that was his free agency year. Then went out and saw him a couple times in Philly and got to connect with him there. And then 2019 comes around, trained him, now we're on year 2. And really, I tell you that not because, yeah, it's cool, I get to train a baseball player and it's a childhood dream that I get to fulfill, but understand that it had nothing to do with, I can do this for you. It's like, oh, no one's doing this training technique or no one's doing this. You should be doing it my way. It's how do I add value to what you've already got going on, right? And so taking that mindset with you in everything that you do, every relationship you do, right? You have to understand that true trust is when you're willing to share your network with someone else, right? John Baker is not going to introduce me to Jake Arrieta if he thinks I'm an asshole, right? It's like, why would I introduce him to someone that's going to tarnish my relationship with someone else I care about, right? So we have to really start looking at how do we treat people? What angle do we play? Sure. Do I have an angle a little bit? Yeah, I get some value. I get a ton of value out of training Jake, right? but he needs to make sure he knows that that's never on the forefront of my mind, right? Everything I do is always geared around how can I help him? How can I help his family? How can I help whatever's going on in his life, right? And that should be the same conversation with all of you and your clients, right? The difference between someone staying and doing sessions with you and someone that doesn't, yeah, people move, yeah, people lose their jobs, but realistically, price is only a factor of value. So if they're not coming and they're not staying and training with you, it's probably because there's something that you're not doing, or you're not connecting with them, or you're too into your programming and making sure that people hit their 5 RMs. You forget that they didn't show up to hit a 5 RM. They showed up to not have lower back pain, and now they have lower back pain, and now they can't pick up their kid, right? Which is what they wanted to be here in the first place for, right? So adding value, making sure that you're connecting back to that, and understanding that it's on you to make sure that you're consistently being someone that is a positive influence on the person that you touch, right? Be a good citizen of the world. You don't have to be the most well-read. You don't have to train the world's elite. You don't have to have the best business, right? But you do owe it to everybody to not be a fucking dick, right? And everybody's in their own journey. Your clients are in a different spot in their journey, right? So when your client's like, I don't even know what broccoli is, and you're like, what the fuck? How do you not know what broccoli is? Understand that you're not just a day in front of your clients in their journey. You should be years ahead of your clients in your journey, right? But nowadays, information's so readily available, your clients are reading as much as you are. So you better have something in play. And I'm not saying you need to cite research or go to all the seminars, or that matters, but you do need to have a voice that stands for something. And you need to make sure that you can use that story to help your clients get better. So that was my story.
I love that, man. Speaking of value, this thing was, this interview was jam-packed, my man. I can't tell you enough, speaking of how this all manifested, it was me reaching out on a whim through a DM and Instagram. So dude, I really, really appreciate you taking the time and sharing so much of this. I mean, I hope this story inspires others, and especially as we get to the end of this here, like the value play and how important human connection and relationships are. Like, I 150% agree. I think it's something that I took advantage of in my own life, up until probably just a few years ago. And I, we always talk about sleep and nutrition and exercise, but what about human connection? What about relationships? Like, that should be a pillar of its own. And I think you're 100% right. You hit it right on the head, my friend.
Well, there's a lot of really talented people out there, right? And you might be really good at doing a lot of things by yourself, but someday you will need someone else's help. And when you realize that no one wants to help you, it's a real lonely fucking world out there, right? I remember being a kid, and there was always a homeless guy outside of the Safeway that we did grocery shopping at. And as a kid, you don't understand why that person's standing there with a sign, like asking for food, especially when you have a family that has it, right? And I was like, I always wanted to give them money, and my mom was like, you don't give them money. And so then we started carrying around like instant oatmeal, like a Quaker thing of instant oatmeal you could put with hot water. And I rolled down the window. For those of you that don't know, I roll down the window as if I'm using a manual, because car windows used to have to be rolled down with a lever, not a button. And so I was like, I tried to hand him this instant oatmeal, and he was like, I don't want that. And I was like, wait. And I didn't understand. I remember asking my mom, I was like, doesn't he have a sign that says I'm hungry? And I'm trying to give him food, and he doesn't want food, right? So it's like, for him, he just straight up didn't want it, because that's not what he was after, right? And so I tell that story because it was like, it changed the way I look at things. But for a lot of it is really understanding how you're able to come in and add value to others, and realize that, man, you can't do it all on your own, right? It's really lonely. You don't want to be that dude on the street that like doesn't have anybody to go to, because that's like why I tell that is every time I see a homeless person like that, I always first thing to my head, and obviously a lot of it's mental health, et cetera, whatever. But first thing to my head is always, how do you burn every bridge in your life that no one wants to give you a couch to sleep on? Right? Like, I'm someone that likes to have options and likes to have different, like, I want to have rules I play within, but I have a lot of freedom inside those rules. And so I'm like, how do you have no one that will put you up? Right? So it allows me to kind of run fearlessly in my life, because I'm like, I can go get a job anywhere. I choose where I want to work. I choose who I work with, right? I don't need that job. I choose that job, right? I don't choose to have you as a friend, or you're not my friend because you're there. I choose you to be my friend because I want you to be there, right? So, really making sure that you're providing value to people and making sure you're being a good person, because someday you're like, oh man, can you introduce me to that person? Can you help me out get that? I really need this help doing this. And it's going to come at a time where like, holy crap, you're going to realize how lonely it is. So don't be that. You might be really talented, but bring other people in and learn from them as well.
Absolutely, man. I love that. I love that. Well, dude, Sam, I could probably sit here and talk to you all day, bro. I feel like it's crazy to me. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like there's just some people where I like get to the end of the interview and I'm like, damn, did we just like become best friends? Like,
Yeah.
so, dude, I really enjoyed the conversation, man. And like I said, we'll have to like, I know your expertise in so many different areas, so I'm sure we could dedicate a whole podcast just to that. But
Whatever you
um,
want, man. Happy to do it.
yeah, I definitely love being able to share your story and just kind of hear everything you're doing and have been through and really are like most excited about going forward. So, dude, thank you so much for taking the time, my man. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out.
Thanks, Sam.